Well, Coruscant has always been considered the heart of the Republic. To some extent, Alderaan has been its soul. Quote, a HoloNet dossier on Alderaan.
You sit on an idyllic green pasture. A herd of nurse peacefully grazing on the lush grasses. A deep blue sky overhead. You take in a deep breath of fresh, crisp air. The sound of a nearby waterfall filling the scene with the natural music. In the distance, you see beautiful full forests gently swaying with the soft wind at the foothills of towering snow-capped mountains. Also nestled in the serene valley, the glistening white tower of the city stands in harmony with the natural landscape. This is the life. You lean back to gaze at the deep sky painted with swirling brushstrokes of white, wispy clouds as you settle in for your midday nap. As you have done every day for the long summer. Before you drift off to peaceful slumber, you notice something strange in the sky. A large shadow, a new moon, hovers overhead. A faint gray behemoth with a single large crater dominating its northern hemisphere. It looks as though it is a massive, lidless eye bearing down on the world, judging it with its gaze. It suddenly bursts to life as lines of iridescent green before casting its final judgment on the world, in a violent flash and intense heat and fire.
You are listening to the Star Lores Podcast. I find your lack of faith disturbing.
Are you stuck-up, half-witted, scruffy-looking nerf herder?
But I was going into Tashi Station to pick up some power converters.
Feeling about this.
The World That Was. Alderaan, located amidst the core worlds, was the second in the Alderaan system and the home of many famous galactic heroes. Renowned for its unspoiled beauty, refined culture, and dedication to peace, Alderaanians were committed to preserving their planet's natural surroundings. Originally inhabited by the Killiks, Alderaan was later settled by humans. Despite enduring a battle during the Great Galactic War and a civil war during the subsequent Cold War, Alderaan remained largely peaceful throughout much of galactic history. A lush, mountainous world, it was originally home to the Killiks, an insectoid species who evolved from the most intelligent, non-sentient species on the planet, around 1 million BBY. The Killiks constructed massive hives, such as those in the castle lands near Ouroboros, and ruled the planet until they departed for nearby Alsaken. Eventually, they left for deep space after depleting Alderaan's natural resources, vanishing long before the arrival of other species, arriving in the unknown regions until their rediscovery millennia later. Human colonists arrived from Coruscant via Herglic trade empire in 27,500 BBY, establishing a peaceful society in harmony with nature. Settlers from across the core worlds were drawn to Alderaan's natural beauty. Over time, the Alderaanian monarchy was established, introducing numerous laws to preserve the environment.
The Alderaan System.
Han Solo. I'm captain of the Millennium Falcon. Chewie here tells me you're looking for passage to the Alderaan system.
Yes, indeed. If it's a fast ship.
Fast ship. You've never heard of the Millennium Falcon?
Should I
Alderaan was the central star of the Alderaan system and was originally orbited by 5 planets. Rasa, the first planet from Alderaan. The planet Alderaan itself, now an asteroid field called the Graveyard, following its destruction. Delea, the third planet in the system, and a temperate and terrestrial world. Avrandel, a barren rocky planet with 1 moon, and Avishan, a frigid world. Additionally, the system included an asteroid in far orbit, which was the only known source of Bondar crystals used in lightsabers. These crystals were unique in their ability to briefly stun an opponent if their lightsaber made contact. The Alderaan sector was situated in the core worlds region of the galaxy. Before Alderaan's destruction, Delea, its sister world, was a temperate world with a significant population and bustling economy. Much of Alderaan's industry was outsourced to Delea, resulting in a landscape dotted with factories, warehouses, and urban areas. Delea's thriving economy attracted workers from various species, including Bothans, Basilasks, Rin, and humans. The planet was close enough to Alderaan that it was clearly visible in its sky. After Alderaan's destruction, Delea became the only habitable planet in the system, although it was significantly smaller than Alderaan. Senator Bail Antilles played a crucial role in facilitating trade between the 2 planets, passing laws that strengthened their economic ties in 33 BBY. Carlist Raycan was inspecting a new Rebel Alliance satellite transmission station in a distant orbit around Delea when Alderaan was destroyed. Delea also served as an evacuation site for the few who managed to escape Alderaan before its demise. When Princess Leia Organa visited Delea to mourn the loss of her homeworld and to gather support for the Rebel Alliance, she encountered the former Jedi Ferrus Olin. During her visit, she also faced betrayal from a group of Alderaanians who attempted to turn her over to the Galactic Empire. Alderaan itself was a terrestrial, temperate world perfect for sustaining life. It had a rotation of 24 hours and an orbital rotation of 364 standard days. A single moon orbited the planet of Alderaan, casting its light across its surface at night and providing illumination for Thranata riders, including the young Princess Leia Organa. Sometime after 7 BBY, the moon was shattered and its fragments became part of the asteroid field known as the Graveyard, which was created when Alderaan was destroyed. Geology, geography, and environment.
Alderaan, often referred to as the shining star of the core worlds, was a planet of wild grasslands, ancient mountain ranges, and vast networks of lakes and waterways, creating an ideal habitat for diverse flora and fauna. It was home to some of the galaxy's most iconic creatures, such as the Nerf, Grazer, and Thranta. Alderaanian cities were thoughtfully integrated into the natural landscape, with examples like Crevasse City, built along canyon walls and nearly invisible from above. Other cities stood on stilts along coastlines or lay beneath polar ice. The capital city, Alderaan, known for its prestigious university, was located on a small island in the heart of Caldera. In the castle lands, ancient Killik mounds served as silent reminders of a long-lost indigenous species, drawing philosophers, poets, and artists to the area for inspiration and reflection. Alderaan's rich environment supported over 8,000 species of grass and an even greater variety of wildflowers, along with a wide array of spices, herbs, and grains. Though the planet lacked major oceans, it had a single polar ice cap, with thousands of lakes and connecting waterways covering the rest of its surface.
Capital City. Alderaan was located on an island in the center of a lake near the Triple Horn Mountains. The lake, a meteor crater filled with water from around 30,500 BBY, was surrounded by low foothills covered with woodlands and green fields. The snowy peaks of the Triple Horn Mountains were visible from the city, and the lake's water sparkled with an icy blue hue in the morning light. Across the lake, a vast wilderness provided a distant view of the capital. Alderaan was designed to blend seamlessly with the natural landscape, featuring white, freeform buildings that harmonized with the island's uneven terrain. The city's architecture created a graceful connection between the green fields and the white clouds. The temperate climate, occasionally touched by light snow, enhanced Alderaan's scenic beauty. Visitors typically arrived by air or across the lake by boat. The city's striking white buildings included the Grand Alderaan Royal Palace, which impressed many. The palace served as the residence of Queen Brea Organa and Prince Bael Prester Organa during the final years of the Galactic Republic. Although the palace's towers were prominent, taller buildings to the west occasionally obscured the view. Alderaan was also home to the prestigious University of Alderaan and the high-tech Alderaan Universal Med Center. The city featured a spacer quarter with numerous bars and hotels, a bustling marketplace, and the primary spaceport on its outskirts, housed in a cluster of hemispherical buildings. Established within the meteor crater to minimize environmental impact, Alderaan was renowned for its academic and cultural institutions. The University of Alderaan was founded by the philosopher Coelius, was one of the oldest and most respected in the galaxy. Over time, other important buildings and institutions were added, making Alderaan the political and cultural heart of Alderaan. In the years leading up to 0 BBY, Star Tours offered trips to Alderaan, highlighting its status as one of the galaxy's safest destinations. However, the city and the planet were destroyed by the Death Star. After Alderaan's destruction, surviving Alderaanians formed the Alderaan Alliance and relocated to New Alderaan. There they built New Alderaan, a replica of their lost capital. Society and culture.
Alderaan's culture deeply valued education, the arts, and peaceful diplomacy. The Alderaanians were devoted participants in the Galactic Senate, and later its imperial counterpart, emphasizing their commitment to governance and harmony. They strove to live in balance with their natural environment, seamlessly integrating their cities into the planet's landscape. Philosophy was a cherished pursuit among Alderaanians. A typical Alderaanian was well-educated and cultured, with a thriving community of poets and artists. The planet's stunning beauty inspired creative expression, with vast grasslands serving as canvases for unique grass paintings. Alderaan was also famous for its cuisine, made exceptional by a wide array of spices and herbs, which allowed chefs to craft some of the galaxy's finest dishes. Steamed Alderaanian spiced wine was particularly popular. Alderaan's main exports included wine, art, and luxury goods, earning it the nickname planet of beauty. Although the democratic society, Alderaan was governed by a hereditary constitutional monarchy, with the House of Organa presiding over the High Court and the Legislative High Council. The monarchs held various titles such as Prince, First Chairman, Queen, King, and Viceroy. Traditionally, the heir to the throne also served on the High Council and as Senator of Alderaan. A vizier assisted the monarch, while numerous noble houses held significant influence in the government. Alderaan's government was so committed to peace that they refrained from questioning any spacecraft arriving or departing from the planet. Several decades before the Clone Wars, a political conflict known as the Alderaan Ascendancy contention arose when the great families, including House Organa and House Antilles, could not agree on the next viceroy. After 3 inconclusive votes, the Alderaanians sought help from the Galactic Senate, which sent a committee led by Jorah Sabaoth to resolve the dispute. The committee eventually ruled in favor of House Organa, declaring them the rightful claimant to the throne. Bail Organa, the leader of Alderaan, was on the planet when it was destroyed, while his heir and secretly adopted daughter, Princess Leia, served as senator from Alderaan in the Imperial Senate.
Ancient history. Alderaan was a founding member of the Galactic Republic in 25,053 BBY. It played a crucial role in early hyperspace exploration and was home to the Alderaan Royal Engineers, an early Republic shipwright responsible for settling Nim Drovis. During the Mandalorian Wars, Alderaan faced an invasion threat from Cassus Fett's forces, but the attack was averted when the Muir Talisman, an ancient Sith artifact, turned the Mandalorians into Rakghouls, wiping out the invasion force. In the Great Galactic War, Alderaan was invaded by the Sith Empire, which quickly overwhelmed local defenses and took the royal family hostage. The Republic and Jedi launched a successful counterattack, reclaiming the planet and dealing a major blow to the Sith. This led Alderaan's leaders to adopt a hardline stance against the Sith in the Galactic Senate. In 3653 BBY, after the Treaty of Coruscant ended the conflict in favor of the Sith, Alderaanian Crown Prince Gal Pantir withdrew Alderaan from the Republic in protest. This decision sparked deep divisions, leading to civil war after the prince's assassination and his mother's death. Rival houses clashed, with one attempting a military coup. During the Interstellar Cold War, Alderaan saw proxy battles between the Republic-backed House Organa and the Sith-supported House Thule, though neither side deployed significant forces on the planet. Around this time, a shipment of rare artworks intended for the Museum of Antiquities was replaced with forgeries by the artist Ornis Lodin. In 3667 BBY, the Sith Empire launched a surprise attack on Alderaan. Led by the Sith Lord Darth Malgus, the Imperial forces bombarded the planet, causing widespread devastation. Jurano was among the cities destroyed, with countless lives lost and extensive damage inflicted on the city. Jurano was nestled in the valley of Jern Mountains. Its design was intentional, making it appear as if it had been hewn from the surrounding mountains itself. During the Great Galactic War, Jurano was served as the summer palace for House Pantir. In the conflict with the Eternal Empire, Alderaan hosted the Centennial Thranta race organized by Malika Sturm and saw the destruction of the Star Fortress in 3631 BBY. In 27 BBY, Jedi Master Eth Koth protected the planet during the Ashar Korda crisis. Recent History.
During the Clone Wars, Alderaan strongly opposed the Military Creation Act, preferring to maintain its own security forces while remaining loyal to the Republic. The planet welcomed exiles from separatist worlds, including those from Ando, allowing them to settle through the refugee relief movement. Due to this humanitarian effort, Alderaan became a target and was nearly destroyed by General Grievous. The village of Shi'Enar was founded on a 100-hectare plot of donated land in the grassy plains of Alderaan, featuring a petrified Killik hive mound. Established by the refugee relief movement, it was designed to help manage the surge of refugees from secessionist Confederate planets and ease overcrowding in the core worlds. With Alderaan easing its immigration restrictions, Shi'Enar quickly became home to hundreds of displaced individuals, including Aqualish and other species. Former Supreme Chancellor Finis Valorum participated in the village's groundbreaking ceremonies before the onset of the Clone Wars. With the rise of the Galactic Empire, Queen Breha Organa and Viceroy Bail Prestor Organa adopted Leia Amidala Skywalker. The Empire also violently eradicated the Jedi Praxium on Alderaan, though a few students managed to escape. Soon after, Jedi Knight Lenik Itkala led a group of Kamasi refugees to settle on Alderaan after Emperor Palpatine devastated their homeworlds of Kamas. Lenik served as the trustant of the Kamasi remnant and an advisor to the Organas. Following the Empire's formation, Alderaan was rocked by anti-imperial protests, particularly from alien refugees, who were now heavily taxed to return home. Over time, Alderaan became a safe haven for those resisting imperial oppression, eventually contributing to the planet's own downfall. The Rebel Alliance gained significant support on Alderaan, with the Alderaan Guards often informing families of those who died in service to the Alliance, such as Kisek Doran. When Bail Organa, Garm Bel Iblis, and Mon Mothma officially founded the Rebel Alliance, many Alderaanians offered their resources and lives, despite the lingering trauma of the Clone Wars. Alderaan became a key source of early Alliance warriors, leaders, and officers. In the aftermath of the Clone Wars, Alderaan dismantled its frigates and light cruisers, placing its defensive armaments and superweapons aboard the armory warship Another Chance. The ship was programmed to jump through hyperspace indefinitely until recalled by the High Council, though the opportunity never arose.
Destruction and Legacy. Shortly after the destruction of the planet Despire, Alderaan became the first major target of the Death Star. In a brutal demonstration of power, Grand Moff Wilhuff Tarkin ordered the planet's destruction, despite Princess Leia's protests. Although Leia claimed Alderaan was defenseless, it was reputed to have some of the strongest defenses in the Empire. When Death Star Gunner 10 Granite initiated the superlaser, energy from the hypermatter reactor was channeled through the weapon, firing at superluminal velocity. This marked the first known instance of the superlaser firing at full power. Having Leia aboard the Death Star, Tarkin forced her to witness the destruction of her world firsthand. Alderaan was chosen as a target for numerous reasons, both symbolic, as one of the founding worlds of the Republic, as well as personal, for Leia, Bail Organa, and the obvious rebel sympathies of the world. The obliteration of Alderaan killed billions of sentient beings and caused a massive disturbance in the Force. Obi-Wan Kenobi, en route to the Alderaan system, described it as millions of voices crying out in terror and suddenly silenced. At the onset of the Galactic Civil War, Carlist Raycan led covert operations for the Rebel Alliance within the Alderaan system. He managed a network of communication satellites that connected nearby star systems to Alderaan. When the Death Star entered the system, Raycan made the difficult decision not to provide evacuation ships to the citizens of Alderaan, fearing that an evacuation would expose the planet's rebel ties to the Empire. Tragically, he was left devastated as he witnessed the destruction of his homeworld shortly after. Moff Tarkin's plan backfired spectacularly, driving thousands to join the Rebel Alliance, even within the core worlds, and inciting open rebellion in the Mid-Rim. Many Alderaanians serving in the Imperial military defected to the rebellion after learning of their homeworld's destruction, including TIE fighter pilot Tycho Selchu. Although the Empire attempted to blame the rebels for Alderaan's destruction, this deception convinced few. The remains of Alderaan became known as the Graveyard, and Alderaanians who were off-planet at the time of its destruction performed a private ceremony called the Returning, sending capsules filled with gifts for their lost loved ones into the debris field. Some exiles, known as the Guardians, patrolled the graveyard to protect those capsules from pirates, earning high regard among other exiles. Han Solo and the crew of the Millennium Falcon were among the first to visit the graveyard, attempting to deliver R2-D2 to Bail Organa before the Falcon's navicomputer updated Alderaan's status as destroyed. In the aftermath, Imperial agents often ambushed ships performing the returning ritual, arresting their passengers and crew. Due to the high risk posed by these Imperial actions, the Rebel Alliance considered quarantining the graveyard. The asteroid field witnessed a brief battle during which Renegade Squadron seized a holocron that had survived the destruction of Alderaan. The shattered remnants of the planet's moon were also scattered throughout the graveyard. In 0 ABY, a group of Alderaanians established a colony on Aeolus, only to have it destroyed by the Empire 8 months later. The remaining refugees were eventually taken in by the Alderaan Alliance and resettled on New Alderaan, a planet discovered by the Rebel Alliance. Even decades later in 24 ABY, the force disturbance caused by Alderaan's destruction could still be felt by force-sensitive individuals, like Tenel Ka Jo. Around this time, Jason and Jaina Solo retrieved a piece of Alderaan's core with a lightsaber as a birthday gift for their mothers Leia.
Hello again, welcome aboard the Millennial Falcon. This is Christian.
And this is Jordan.
We're currently orbiting the debris field that was once the beautiful and idyllic planet of Alderaan.
Christian, I've been looking for love in Alderaan places.
You're not going to find it here, and that was awful.
Definitely not here. You don't want to find love on Alderaan. Had to say it.
Yeah.
Had to. Doing the Alderaan.
The joke
episode.
makes itself.
Yeah.
We're joking in the middle of a graveyard.
Making Alderaan jokes at all the wrong times. Anyways, before we jump into it, though, we have to thank all our supporting listeners. You guys know who you are. You Patreon members helping to keep this bucket of bolts flying so we can explore debris fields of old planets that were holocausted by the Empire. But first of all, we want a big shout out and thanks to some of our new patrons, Vincent, Jesus, and Zach. Thank you guys very much. You definitely help to keep the show going. And if you want to be a Patreon member, for $3 a month, you can get access to all the bonus episodes and a couple of the private groups. You can also do single buys of episodes on Patreon as well, or you can subscribe on Spotify. There's an if you already have a Spotify membership, there's an extra subscription option where you can like subscribe specifically to this podcast and you can get access to the bonus episodes. You will notice them in our Spotify feed, but they're just locked. You can't access them without the subscription. So if you want to support that way, you can as well. And just a reminder to everyone, we are asking just $3 a month for Patreon. I feel like we try not to charge too much. I know a lot of other podcasts like $8-9, just their most
we're not
basic
that
tier.
important.
Yeah, their most basic tier. So I feel like, I know we don't put out bonus episodes like probably about once a month at least. We try, but we also have a library of episodes. If you're new, you can go through those and you can get access to all the new ones. But they just take a long time to produce and edit and whatnot. So we try and get some out. So I know we don't have like a ton of bonus content, but we try and get some for y'all. But yeah, and you just help support the show, help us keep us on the airways. But yeah, $3 a month. And again, we do have a $5 option if you are feeling more generous, but there's no extra benefits. It's just a $5 option. And then there's also a $1 option if you're struggling, you're hurting, but you still want to show your love and you want to support the show. Again, no difference in the access or content. It's just if you're just hurting. So we do want to give it as much access to as many people as possible. Yeah. Also, if you haven't heard already, we have merch on Redbubble. You can go buy stickers, shirts, hats, whatnot. Buy some of our Star Lords podcast merch.
Support some of our fictional supporters.
Yeah. Some of it's funny, and we're gonna keep trying to regularly update new
material.
Yeah, new prints on there. So you have a wide array of choices. And also rate and review the show. If you don't want to support monetarily, absolutely no problem. But if you guys could take a minute to rate and review the show or go subscribe on YouTube, that also just helps us
reach a wider audience.
Yeah, reach a wider audience, spread out to more people. Also follow us on social media. Get in touch with us. Send us a message. We are on Discord, Instagram, X, Facebook. All those links will be in the description of the show. We have a link tree in the show that you can just click on and you'll get all the links to everything. And follow us on our social medias. Send us a message there. You can also email us at starlordspodcast@gmail.com. And you can send us a message. Also, any business inquiries at all. We have been getting a couple of those. So if you have any business inquiries, definitely the best place is the email. And in terms of connecting with us, we also love to see your Star Wars collection. So send us a picture of that, your fan fiction. I just dropped our first fan fiction audio drama on the Patreon. So another reason to get Patreon to listen to some of the cool audio dramas we're going to be doing. If you have fan fiction, headcanon, that kind of stuff. We also do, like, if you've heard some of our episodes, we do in-universe ads as well, which are always kind of fun. So we take scripts or audio of that if you have it. Can't guarantee we'll always accept every one, but just give it to us and we'll try and put it on. Anyways, any corrections or comments on any of the episodes, definitely send them to us. You can send them through a direct message on any of our social medias or through the email. And I think that's it for the housekeeping. Anything else I missed?
No, I think that covered it pretty well.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Always love to hear from you guys. So yeah, definitely reach out on any of those methods Jordan mentioned. We're even going to do some mailbag stuff in this episode. So in the future, if you have questions or comments, we can definitely maybe air them there too.
For sure.
All right, let's get into Alderaan. This planet's actually pretty well-rounded in terms of development. Some planets, there's like one sentence on them, and other worlds, there's like reams and reams of information. Alderaan is definitely in that second category where they have like a well-developed government, sub-factions within the world, all different kind of locations that are well-rounded.
Probably next to Coruscant, it's the most like developed planet in terms of story, history, and whatnot.
Yeah.
and important characters who come from it. I mean, there's a few others, obviously, like Tatooine and stuff.
Yeah, I was going to say there's some of the major ones, which is ironic because Tatooine's supposed to be this backwater wasteland, but it's also pretty well developed in terms of like species and history.
Yeah,
and culture.
you have a lot on Tatooine, despite it being like extremely sparsely populated and unimportant to galactic affairs.
Yeah. Except being the birthplace of our Lord and Savior Anakin Skywalker.
But Alderaan is like one of the like top 5 planets that you're gonna get a lot of stories.
A lot of information. Yeah, and also like just the centrality of characters. You have like the Antilles family, so you have characters like Wedge from there, and then you have of course the Organa family with Bail and Princess Leia. So just a lot of potential for story and history. On that note, overall it's described as like a pretty idyllic planet. It's
sort of like a liberal Democrat's wet dream. It's like
everyone's highly educated. Everything is peaceful.
It's like in harmony with nature. You know. It's so like
it's the LA George Lucas wish existed.
Yeah, exactly. Without the homeless encampments and crap on the streets,
terrible governance and everything else. Sorry, we try not to get too political, but sometimes you can't help it.
Yeah, but you can live out your fantasies on a script. It's a lot easier.
One interesting distinction I do want to make, though, is although Alderaan is always classified as like peaceful and, we don't have any weapons, even Leia says that to Tarkin before he blows up the world. It's true, yes, they are very, very peaceful relative to other places in the galaxy. However, they do have or at least historically did have like a military and a defensive force. And the only issue is like they didn't use it because they didn't have to, being a peaceful core world. You'll find a lot of tension comes between like a planet's geography. So like you have like Alderaan and Coruscant who don't struggle that much against political upheavals because they're kind of insulated from it being in the core. Yeah. And as you drift out into the mid rim and then the outer rim, you get different levels of chaos, right?
Yeah, totally.
And Alderaan is just one of the beneficiaries, one might even say privileged planets. So again, they do maintain like I wouldn't describe it maybe as a military. It's almost like I forget the country that doesn't have. There's Japan and one other country that don't have like standing militaries, but they have like a very militarized police force.
Yes. Yeah. I know Japan is like that, yeah.
And that's also on paper too, because Japan does have the ability to project power, just not.
They're technically not
allowed to.
After the World War II settlement, they are not allowed to have a military, but they kind of do.
Again, it's one of those things on paper.
And actually, as a rabbit trail, side note, like America has been like actively encouraging Japan to be way more militarized and like be way more hawkish just against China, right? Because there's that geopolitical struggle right now between America and China. So America wants to project power through countries like Japan and the Philippines and whatnot.
And encourage them to be more outwardly.
So America might have to just rip up that treaty altogether, whatever agreements they made. However, they defenestrated Japan, Imperial Japan. So
and there's another country too in Central America that has a similar situation. I can't remember who it is, but they don't have an official standing military, just a heavily militarized police force. Which also, I will add, what's worse? At least the military is meant for external conflict.
Right,
but if you militarize your police, there's only one group of people they're going to go to war with. And that's its own citizens. So
it gives your those police can be a lot more tyrannical than just like
certainly the possibility.
Cops,
exactly. It extends beyond law enforcement. Or the laws become more tyrannical. In any case, Alderaan is not that place, but they do have. They're not like being peaceful is different than being defenseless, and I think that's an important distinction.
Yes,
you can be heavily armed and not looking for a fight versus.
However, I will say if the Killiks had come back, perhaps Alderaan wouldn't have been destroyed in the way that it was. So I say bring the Killiks back and make Alderaan great again.
weren't going to be political.
Resurrect, find some genetic material of Killiks, clone them. We know the Empire.
In the Outer Rim. We can just import them from the
did
Outer
they?
Rim. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought they were like almost extinct. But,
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell them to come back, and Alderaan needs you.
Well, they're coming back to nothing now.
Yeah.
Because Alderaan is a ruin. But.
Actually, okay. So I've been having this idea for the podcast bouncing around my head, like alt histories, Star Wars alt histories. So I'll just say it here on this episode. Is I want to like do maybe bonus episodes or something. Where we discuss alternative histories, like what if X never happened? Like,
yeah, it's almost like Star Wars legend, or not legends, Infinities.
Yeah. So just like, but yeah, that's another one. Like, what if Alderaan was never destroyed, or they put up a fight or something, and didn't let the Death Star get like right in front of them to destroy them?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there are certainly maybe not an opportunity to fight off the Death Star, but with the story of Raycan being that rebel spy who they saw the Death Star arrive in system and he didn't alert them to it.
Yeah.
Was that the right call? I'm sure he's racked with guilt forever for not doing it, but would it have changed Alderaan's outcome? I don't know. I think Tarkin was pretty dead set on blowing up the planet regardless, so at least he could have evacuated a bunch of his comrades.
It's true. And at the same time, like Alderaan was an Imperial planet. It was like, it's not like they didn't have the jurisdiction to just waltz in there.
I mean, theoretically, yeah.
Yeah.
Does the government have the authority to nuke its own cities? I don't know.
Well, no. Yeah. But that's what I'm saying is like, would they have even mounted a defense had like a huge Imperial ship come up? It's like, oh, it's just an Imperial ship.
Yeah, like it's one of ours.
We don't know they're just gonna like wipe
pass
us out.
by.
Yeah.
And the Death Star wasn't known galactically until it was unveiled doing this exactly. So people wouldn't have even known what its capabilities were. It's like, oh, it's a battle station.
Yeah. I believe there's even some sort of like I can't remember what man, this is very fuzzy, so bear with me, but I know there's like it might even be places in Wyoming and stuff where the US has nuclear facilities, and if like enemies ever got to it, they will just nuke those cities, like they won't allow, they'll even kill their own people in order to like not,
like scorched earth.
Yeah, to not let
I don't know if that's their policy, but I do know of those like government bunkers, and I don't know exactly where they reside, but like they're meant to evacuate pretty much the entirety of like the American government in case of nuclear war. Now it's possible what you're saying. I'm saying like if an enemy were to like capture, like penetrate that far into
and it's like close to a city, they're not going to care about that city, and like
they'll just evacuate their personnel and then nuke the city.
Yeah, it's just like because they cannot allow the enemy to get a hold of certain technologies.
If any of our listeners in the American government want to reach out and let us know exactly what the policy is on paper, and maybe let your listeners know what cities those might be,
exactly,
in case they want to relocate. But,
precisely.
Yeah, it would be like a scorched earth strategy, right? Like retreat and leave nothing behind.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the destruction of Alderaan was not
that case.
But, this was just a peaceful liberal democracy.
I'm sure the Empire tried to make it out to be in their propaganda.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
we had to do it.
Yeah,
Alderaan had to be destroyed for the good of the Empire.
Yeah, they were harboring weapons of mass destruction.
They were harboring their own Death Star.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, like I said, it's an important distinction, being peaceful versus being defenseless.
Yeah, that's true.
Other than that, any other major thoughts, comments? I always find it funny how many democracies and how democracy is such a central theme of Star Wars, and yet all the good guy leaders are royal families.
That's true.
Naboo has a constitutional monarchy.
Yeah.
Alderaan is a constitutional monarchy. And we come from a country that has a constitutional monarchy in real life. So
I almost think of Alderaan as like maybe like Helsinki or Stockholm or something, like those countries that do still have, they are constitutional monarchies and they have royal families and whatnot, but they really have a political class that rules the country. So
yeah, that's very much that's the case. And that's saying that as a Canadian who also has
Yeah.
a constitutional monarchy,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, it seems like that's maybe what they're going. But I don't know. Yeah, it seems like the Organos had a lot of power over the whole planet.
yeah,
So a lot
being
of
like
political
imagine
power.
your senator being literally inherited through birth.
Yeah,
like that's not very democratic.
No, no, it's not. But
It is what it is.
It is
It's,
what
it's
it
Star
is.
Wars.
anyways, we did have a couple questions and comments from the mailbag, so we're gonna go into the mailbag now and just read off some comments that people had. So our first one is from Gilbert. He says, I just have a couple questions. One that could possibly be answered on the podcast, and I haven't heard it yet, or it hasn't been addressed. With how prominent slavery is in the Star Wars universe, in Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, we see Shmi and Anakin in their own home, which got me thinking and asking, are they truly considered slaves or more like indentured servants? We see other forms of slavery in the Star Wars universe in both canon and the expanded universe, with one of the most prominent examples being the Zagarian race, where they do treat everyone as what we see as slaves. But the situation with Watto, Shmi, and Anakin has me intrigued, as they seem to have their own home, work schedule, and are able to do activities such as building C-3PO, pod racing, etc. So what seems to be the rules on slavery in the galaxy? Let's address that, and then we'll do his second, because he has another question. But Christian, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think people have a very myopic view of what slavery looks like. And that comes from, obviously, history.
Yeah.
Slavery has existed for a very long time in human history and likely in Star Wars, and can encapsulate such a range of difference in how slaves and property people are treated.
Yeah. People in our modern conception, because we get like Hollywood depictions of like mostly American slavery, and they're thinking chattel slavery.
Yeah.
And that's not exactly how slavery has always been throughout history.
Practice. Like you look at Greek slaves and Roman slaves and the Vikings took slaves, right?
Yeah.
So how they were treated is very dependent on like cultural context and history. So yeah, like I think people have a very myopic view of what slavery can look like. Slavery is ultimately ownership of another person.
Yeah.
Some people historically have been very cruel and treated those people exactly like property and everything you kind of mentally depict, and other people have given their slaves a lot of, I wouldn't say complete freedom, but a lot more freedom than what you might consider.
Oh, there's I can't remember the guy's name, but there's like stories of Roman slaves and Greek slaves. There's this one Roman slave in particular. He was a slave of like a pretty prominent senator. And this guy had like the power to execute people. Like he was a slave, but he had huge administrative powers over this guy's estate. He was hiring and firing people. Like
he was acting like a governor.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, exactly. Like, so again, like you said, it's myopic. And y'all can quote me on this, but slavery in history hasn't always been all that bad. A lot of slaves have had it pretty good, depending on their situation, right? Like, in some cases, if you're a subsistence farmer, and most of your kids die before 5, and you're facing famine, like sometimes slavery is the better option than being
starving
like
to death.
being a free person in like a very miserable existence. So people voluntarily sell themselves into slavery, right? So again, it's we shouldn't judge the past too harshly, I think, in terms of the situation that they had back then. I also wanted to quickly mention on the whole idea of indentured servants, and that Gilbert brought up in his question. And that's a good point, because indentured servitude, again, it is actually kind of a categorically different thing. Whereas indentured servants typically have a expiry date on how long their servitude
they're
is.
almost working off a debt.
Exactly. That typically is what it is. And actually, there's a great book. I cannot remember all the words are slipping from me today. But there's a good book about indentured slavery or servitude in America in like the 1600s, when the colonies were all being set up, and a lot of them were like from Ireland and Scotland. And actually, the indentured servants would often have it way worse than the actual slaves, the chattel slaves. And if you think about it in terms of like incentives, the indentured servants were only with their master for like a certain amount of time. So what their masters would do, they would just work them till they die, basically. And a lot of indentured servants would die while trying to work off their debt. And a lot of them were terribly, terribly abused. And there's a lot of like documents of this. And indentured servitude often was worse, whereas like slavery, when people actually like owned someone permanently forever, the incentive was to act, they were like an investment, right? So you'd want to keep them relatively healthy. You want to keep them relatively strong, alive. You're not trying to just like squeeze every bit of juice out of that lemon, right? Like you're actually want to invest in the future. So often
you want to keep them functional at a minimum.
Yeah, slaves would actually be treated a lot better than indentured servants, and it's sort of like an interesting period in American history that I have read a little bit about, where like there was a lot of indentured servants for a little while before the transatlantic slave trade really picked up. It was like a lot more indentured servants, and it was like really terrible conditions for them. So anyways, just it is a good point. In terms of like Shmi and Anakin, I would think they were more slaves.
Well, they are owned, first of all, and second of all, they even have the possibility of being executed if they try to leave. So that's a pretty heavy, even though you have your own house and you're allowed a certain range of freedoms.
But I believe that Watto said that Shmi owed him a debt.
Yeah.
So you could say maybe there was some sort of indentured servitude that like as soon as she paid off the debt, but he was probably
but that's
adding
never
interest
been
on
explicit, like indefinite interest.
You can never pay off the interest, so it always, you can never pay off your debt. So
but certainly that range of treatment within what slavery can look like. Ultimately, it's just a difference of whether or not you're owned by another entity, another person, or a society, or a kingdom, or whatever. So hopefully that more or less answers your question.
I don't know. It's more just thoughts on the question, but it's an interesting question.
I would say by definition they were both certainly still slaves. With a little more freedom maybe than others might expect.
And then the second part of Gilbert's question, he says, my second question is definitely more personable. Just if you have ever played a Star Wars RPG such as Age of Rebellion, Edge of the Empire, or Force and Destiny, and what are your characters if you have? I have not,
no.
But I definitely want to.
I have the books, and for this podcast, I actually did want to set up a campaign, but it's very time intensive.
I know.
And maybe we'll get around to it one day with everyone's support, hopefully. We can kick off a decent pen and paper RPG. I have a whole idea for it and what I'd like to do, but I have not actually had the chance to sit down with the rule books and go through them. They're literally sitting in my office in a stack. So I have the books. I just haven't played it yet.
Cool. Okay, our next mailbag question. Hi, I've just discovered the podcast and I'm really enjoying it. Well, thank you. And this is from Bill. Thanks, Bill. He says, I'm up to the Sith episode. My question is, where does the background for the story come from? Legends books or some of the cartoon series? I've seen all the movies, but just decided to start reading the books, Legends and canon. He's curious about Jedi and Sith backstories and where we found it.
Everywhere. Yeah. The answer is everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, you can always go to Wikipedia and just look up a story.
It's like the
character,
aggregate source of everything.
And it'll give you all the sources. So you can go there and look at what source material it's drawing from. I mean, to me, the quintessential Sith book you'd want to read is probably the Darth Bane series. Like, that'll give you a lot about Sith culture and
philosophy, more so, but it's less about the Sith species and Sith Empire. So depending on what kind of Sith you're looking for,
I think he's referring more to Jedi and Sith. He said Jedi and Sith, so I think he's more talking about like the
philosophical Sith,
not the species.
But there's a range of sources of everything from books, comic books, video games, the movies, TV series. encyclopedias. Like even within the books, you have like your more novels, you have encyclopedic type books that just kind of give backstories to different planets and places and people. And then, of course, you have the novels that break down like individual characters and specific storylines. So, yeah, it's really just a big range of places. Star Wars is so big.
Yeah, absolutely. There's also sort of like more ancient Sith history, and this goes back to kind of when the Sith species. There's some comic books. I can't remember the name. I'll have to look up the name of the comic books, but it's like with Marker Ragnos and stuff. And that sort of covers like the actual core. It's on Korriban, on the planet that's like the Sith capital, and it's very ancient Egypt like, and it covers a lot of those ancient Sith characters, and that's kind of the period when the Sith philosophy itself starts to develop, but it's still the Sith species. It's not quite the religion yet, if you will. It's kind of both. It's the species and the religion.
Tales of the Jedi.
Yeah, Tales of the Jedi. So that's a good one to check out. And like I said, the Darth Bane is all. If you want like a lot of interesting Sith stuff, Darth Bane's a good one.
Also, Dawn of the Jedi kind of speaks to less the Sith and more of how like the light and the dark start as concepts within like the Jedi religion. And one more book I would suggest is
that's it.
That's it.
You don't
off the top of my head.
Okay. Yeah, off the top of my head as well. I didn't actually write anything down for these questions. I just kind of
there is also I haven't actually read it yet, but there's a small like handbook. It's more the Disney post Disney purchase of Sith too. The Book of Sith, I think it's called.
Oh yeah, that's a good one too.
It's just a little handbook thing.
I've flipped through it. It's pretty cool.
I've read the Imperial one and the Bounty Hunter one.
Okay.
There's the Jedi one and the Sith one.
Yeah.
So I think there's a fifth one.
Okay. Yeah. Anyways, those are good places to go. Anyways, want to thank everyone for tuning in today. Make sure to follow us on all our social medias. If you just Google Star Wars, you'll find our Instagram, Facebook, X, Discord. You go to any of those platforms and search Star Wars, you'll find us. Reach out to us, connect with us. We love hearing from you guys. Share the show if you like it. Peace.